The last October sunlight catches the leaded glass windows of Aunt Carol's Charleston mansion, throwing sparkles across the pristine white columns. I stand on the wraparound porch, my leather satchel heavy against my hip, listening to the sounds of laughter drifting through the window panes. My fingers smooth the lapel of my professorial blazer, checking for non-existent wrinkles. A burst of particularly loud laughter makes my hand pause on the brass doorbell. Inside, someone mentions Madison's name, followed by the unmistakable twitter of Aunt Carol's social laugh. The one she reserves for particularly impressive achievements. The door swings open before I can press the bell. Mother stands there in her pearl gray cocktail dress, a flute of champagne already in hand. Her smile tightens at the corners when she sees me. Charlotte. She steps back, gesturing me inside with a wave that manages to be both graceful and dismissive. You're late. Traffic on 195. I step into the foyer, the scent of gardenias and furniture polish wrapping around me like an expensive stranglehold. Everyone's in the parlor, Mother says, already turning away. Madison was just telling us about her summer internship. Of course she was. I follow Mother down the hallway, past the portraits of dead Monroes who probably would have disapproved of me too. The click of my sensible heels on hardwood is drowned out by the swell of voices from the parlor. And then the senior partner said I had real potential. Madison's voice carries through the doorway. He thinks I could make junior partner by third. She breaks off as I enter. For a fraction of a second, something flickers across her face. But then Brian's arm tightens around her shoulders, and the moment passes. Look who finally made it, Brian announces to the room. He raises his scotch in my direction. The other Monroe who went north. A few relatives titter politely. Grandmother Margaret doesn't even look up from her needlepoint. Charlotte teaches somewhere up north. Mother explains to cousin Sarah's new husband, her tone suggesting I run a particularly unsuccessful dog walking service. Now Madison, tell us more about that partner's yacht party. I sink onto the edge of an antique settee, sliding my satchel beneath it. Inside, the latest issue of the Princeton Literary Review peeks out, my name listed under Distinguished Contributors. I push it deeper into the bag. Some of us are going places, Brian Stage whispers to Uncle Robert, unlike others who just teach. The crystal champagne flutes tinkle with shared amusement. I think of my empty apartment the night I got my Princeton position. The way I'd sat alone in the dark, clutching the acceptance letter, knowing no one would understand what it meant. Couldn't you find something more impressive? Mother had asked when I told her. With your credentials, surely some law firm would take you. A butler appears with fresh drinks. I decline with a small shake of my head, watching Madison hold court from her perch on the silk brocade sofa. She's wearing a pale pink sheath dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Her diamond tennis bracelet catches the light every time she gestures. Madison's going to be the first Monroe at Princeton since great-grandfather William. Grandmother Margaret announces to the room, finally looking up from her needlework. Her steel gray eyes sweep past me as if I'm part of the furniture. Now there's a legacy to be proud of. The room murmurs in appreciation. I think of the faculty parking permit in my blazer pocket, the way Madison's eyes had widened in my classroom doorway on the first day of the semester. Dinner is served. Aunt Carol announces from the doorway. She raises her glass. A toast first to our family's true Princeton star. Glasses rise around the room. Madison's smile falters for just a moment as she catches my eye across the crystal sparkle. To Madison, the family chorus echoes. I'm directed to the far end of the mahogany dining table, wedged between Cousin Timothy's 7-year-old and the empty chair where the gardener sometimes joins us for holiday meals. The distance between my seat and Madison's place of honor beside Grandmother Margaret could be measured in social light years. My literature professor is so demanding. Madison says halfway through the soup course, her voice carrying down the table. She expects us to actually analyze the text instead of just appreciating it. Some people teach because they can't do, dear, Grandmother Margaret interrupts, patting Madison's hand. Don't let her discourage you. Madison's eyes find mine across the candlelight and fine china. For a heartbeat, I see something like understanding pass between us. Then Brian launches into another story about his latest business, ventures something about cryptocurrency and yacht timeshare sand. The moment evaporates like morning fog over the Charleston harbor. I sit silently, watching my family bask in the glow of Madison's borrowed brilliance, thinking of the paper sitting in my grading pile back in Princeton. The one with her name at the top, full of superficial analysis and inherited charm. The one I failed. Aunt Carol's silver dessert cart tinkles across the hardwood floors, bearing an elaborate creme brulee with fresh berries arranged in concentric circles. The candlelight catches the sugar crystals, transforming them into tiny diamonds. Madison's favorite, Aunt Carol announces, positioning the cart between Grandmother Margaret and my cousin. I remember how she always begged for this when she visited during college breaks. Brian reaches across the table for the serving spoon. Speaking of college, have you thought about law school applications yet, sis? Dad always said you had the mind for it. The porcelain dessert plates click against the mahogany table as the butler distributes them. Each one bears the Monroe family crest in faded gold leaf. I trace the worn edge with my fingertip, remembering how Father used to tell me stories about the brave women in our family tree. To Madison's brilliant future, Grandmother Margaret raises her crystal goblet. The overhead chandelier creates a constellation of light points across her pearls. May our family the success it deserves. Mother beams, her third glass of wine lending extra warmth to her cheeks. Not everyone can handle Princeton's pressure, but our Madison was born for it. Some of us are meant to succeed. Uncle Robert's voice carries down the table. He pauses, swirling his brandy. Others, well, they teach. The family titters. A fork scrapes against bone china. The butler's shoes whisper across oriental carpet. Interesting. My voice emerges quieter than intended, but it cuts through the laughter like a letter opener through heavy cream paper. Because I'm Madison's professor. The silence drops like a leather-bound volume in an empty library. Forks freeze mid-air. Wine glasses pause at lips. Mother's face drains to the shade of her best linen tablecloth. Brian's mouth hangs open, displaying the half-chewed remains of his creme brulee. What? Madison stares at her dessert plate. Her shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. I recognize from our office hours the one she takes before defending a difficult thesis statement. Professor Monroe. Her voice carries the same steady tone she used in last week's class presentation. She teaches literature and critical thinking, required course for freshmen. Grandmother Margaret's hand trembles. Red wine splashes onto the tablecloth, blooming like a rose in snow. Charlotte, explain yourself. I set down my napkin, folding it precisely along its creases. I'm an associate professor in the comparative literature department. Madison enrolled in my section this semester. And you never thought to mention this? Mother's voice climbs half an octave. I maintain strict professional boundaries with all my students. The words come easily after years of faculty meetings, including family members. Madison pushes her untouched dessert away. Professor Monroe gave me the first C of my life on my initial paper. You what? Brian slams his glass down. Wine sloshes over the rim. The analysis was superficial. I meet his glare steadily. Like most first attempts from students who've never had to think deeply about literature. You could have helped her more, Mother's voice cracks. Given her extra guidance. She did. Madison straightens in her chair. More than anyone. She made me actually work for once. This is outrageous. Uncle Robert stands, his chair scraping back. Using your position to deliberately make things harder for family. No. Madison's voice rings out, the room stills. She made me better. She was the only one who did. Cousin Erica leans forward, her reading glasses glinting. I think it's admirable. Teaching requires real integrity. I didn't know it was her until I saw her photo in my dorm. Madison looks around the table. On the department website, she never said a word about being family. Uncle James catches my eye from the far end of the table. His slight nod carries the weight of 30 years teaching high school mathematics. Well, Grandmother Margaret dabs at the wine stain with trembling fingers. I suppose we'll need to speak with the department chair about reassignment. No, Madison pushes back her chair. The legs scrape against hardwood with a sound like fingernails on silk. I'm staying in Professor Monroe's class. I've learned more in 8 weeks than in 4 years of private school. Darling. Mother reaches for Madison's arm. Think about your future. I am. Madison's voice carries the same conviction she showed defending her midterm thesis. For the first time, I'm actually thinking, not just performing. The silence stretches. Outside, autumn leaves scrape against leaded glass windows. The butler hovers in the doorway, uncertain whether to clear the abandoned desserts. I fold my hands in my lap, feeling the steady thrum of my pulse against my grandmother's pearl ring. The one Father gave me when I earned my doctorate. Madison's latest paper showed remarkable improvement. She's developing a unique, critical voice. But what about family loyalty? Brian demands. Loyalty? Madison's laugh holds no humor. Like when you told everyone at the club about Charlotte's rejection from Harvard Law. The one she never actually applied to because she was already accepted to Columbia for her PhD? Mother's wine glass tips. Dark liquid seeps into white linen like blood and snow. The grandfather clock in the hall strikes 9, each chime echoing through the silence. I think of my office back at Princeton, where Madison's latest paper sits in my grading pile. The one where she finally found her voice. The one that earned her first A. I believe this concludes dessert. I stand, smoothing my blazer. Madison, I'll see you in class on Monday. We're discussing Virginia Woolf's concept of the inheritance of anger. As I turn to leave, I catch Madison's reflection in the dark window. For the first time tonight, she's smiling. I sat in my car and drove home. During the drive, I am thinking about the first time I graded her. Back during the midterms, Madison's first paper sat untouched on my desk for 3 days. The Monroe family crest at the top of the page caught the fluorescent office light, hand-drawn in the corner with the kind of casual artistry that came from years of practice at garden parties. Below it, 12 pages of superficial charm and inherited confidence. I uncapped my red pen. Later that day, after the results were out, my office door creaked open. Madison stood in the threshold, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, my feedback clutched in her manicured hands. The paper trembled. Is this some kind of joke? Her voice cracked on the last word. A C-? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Sit down, Madison. She sank into the leather seat, her pink cashmere sweater bunching around her shoulders. The paper landed between us with a soft thud. Your analysis of Woolf's stream of consciousness technique was surface level at best. I tapped the relevant paragraph. You spent more time describing her garden parties than examining her actual literary innovation. High school teachers said I had a natural gift. For what? Stating the obvious with perfect grammar? The words came out sharper than I intended. I softened my tone. Madison, you can coast on your name or actually learn something. Your choice. She stared at me, really looked at me for the first time since walking into my classroom 3 weeks ago. Recognition flickered in her eyes. We're related? Yes. Which changes nothing about your grade or my expectations. The phone on my desk lit up. Mother's number. I turned it face down. Madison's shoulders straightened, a flash of that inherited Monroe steel. I want to rewrite it. You have until Friday. She gathered her paper and stood, pausing at the door. Does the family know you're my professor? No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. After she left, I pulled up her admissions file on my laptop. Perfect SAT scores, glowing recommendations, a personal essay about overcoming adversity when her horse lost a dressage competition. I closed the file and opened my gradebook instead. The whispers started in the faculty lounge a week later. The Monroe girl. Professor Wilson's coffee cup clinked against the counter. Certainly comes from good stock. Shame about her struggling in your class. Everyone struggles in my class. I stirred cream into my tea. That's how they learn. The department chair mentioned something about reviewing grading standards. Wilson's eyes met mine. For certain students. The pristine white halls of Princeton suddenly felt very small. My phone buzzed that night as I graded papers in my empty apartment. Madison's name lit up the screen. I can't do this. Her voice was raw. Mother says I should switch professors. Someone more. Understanding. Understanding of what? That you're capable of more than you've been asked to give? Silence stretched between us. Then, I'll see you tomorrow at office hours. The next morning, Madison arrived with dark circles under her eyes and a completely rewritten paper. Her designer bag was smudged with ink, the strap fraying where she'd worried it between her fingers. I wrote it 4 times. She pulled out the draft, no family crest in sight. I kept hearing your voice saying, dig deeper. I read the first paragraph, then the second. By the third, something inside my chest loosened. Here was analysis. Here was actual thought. Here was a mind beginning to wake up. This. I looked up. This is writing. Really? She leaned forward, hope warring with exhaustion on her face. Yes. Now tell me about Wolf's use of temporal shifts in the dinner scene. Her eyes lit up. For the next hour, we dissected the text line by line. When she finally gathered her things to leave, she paused. I've never had to work this hard before. She twisted the strap of her bag. It feels different. Different how? Like I'm finally using my own voice instead of the one they gave me. After she left, I added her paper to my grading pile. Outside my window, autumn leaves skittered across the quad. My phone lit up with another call from Mother. I let it ring. Word spread through the freshman dorms. Soon Madison wasn't coming to office hours alone. She brought other students, children of privilege, struggling to find their own voices beneath the weight of expectations. We formed study groups, discussion circles, places where names and legacies didn't matter. Another assignment was brutal. A comparative analysis of modernist perspectives on class structure. When I handed back the papers, Madison's hands shook as she turned to the last page. A-. She stared at the grade, then at me. I earned this? Every word of it. That evening, I found a note slipped under my office door. Professor Monroe, for the first time in my life, I'm proud of something that's actually mine. Thank you for seeing past my name to who I could become. I pinned it to my bulletin board, next to the faculty committee summons about my grading policies. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, carrying the first hint of winter. Thanksgiving loomed on my calendar like a gathering storm. But for now, in this quiet office, as evening settled over campus, I watched another young woman discover her voice. Not the one her family gave her. Not the one society expected. Her own. The phone on my desk lit up again. Mother's number flashing like a warning. I let it ring. Now the lights and scenery of my neighborhood took me back to reality. I took a long shower, prepared new plans for the lectures, and went to sleep. With days passing by, our lectures grew funnier, and students were developing critical thinking in their own ways. I was proud of all of them, each of them in a different way. Now, almost a month later, the photo sits in its simple, silver frame, slightly askew on my Princeton office desk. Madison and I at the Modernist Literature Symposium, both leaning toward the podium where Joan Didion spoke about self-respect. I straighten the frame, then return to grading the stack of papers before me. My phone buzzes. Another text from Madison. What if I switched my major to comparative literature? The economics lectures feel hollow now, like I'm just memorizing other people's thoughts. I set the phone down without responding. Let her sit with the question. Real decisions deserve silence. A knock at my door interrupts my grading rhythm. Office hours start at 2, I call out, not looking up from an analysis of Wolf's stream of consciousness technique. Not here for office hours, sis. Brian. I raise my head to find him filling my doorway in an expensive suit that still has the tags tucked inside the sleeve. His confident smile falters as he takes in my office, the walls of books, the framed academic journals, the window overlooking the historic quad. Nice view, he says, trying to sound casual. Better than that cubicle they stuck you in at William and Mary. That was 12 years ago, Brian. What do you want? He drops into the chair across from my desk, loosening his tie. Can a brother check on his sister? Mom's worried about you, you know. All alone up here in the ivory tower. I have 70 students and 4 graduate assistants. I'm hardly alone. Speaking of students, he leans forward, lowering his voice. Madison's been talking about changing her major, throwing away all that economics preparation. Her father's livid. I shuffle my papers into a neat stack. Madison is legally an adult. Her academic choices are her own. Come on, Charlotte. We both know you've influenced her. All those little study sessions, those literary discussions. He spreads his hands, all Southern charm. Just encourage her to be practical. That's all we're asking. Like you were practical? How's that cryptocurrency venture working out? His jaw tightens. Some of us try to build things, create opportunities. Not everyone wants to hide behind books their whole life. My phone lights up again. Another text from Madison. Found my old journals from high school. Every entry was what they wanted to hear. Not one real thought. How did I not see it? I turn the phone face down. I think we're done here, Brian. I have papers to read. Just think about what you're doing. To the family. To Madison's future. He stands, adjusts his cuffs. Oh, And Aunt Carol wanted me to officially invite you to Thanksgiving, says Madison insisted. After he leaves, I open my email to find a message from the department chair. Subject line, Commendation for Exceptional Mentorship Program. I click delete without reading it. I don't need their praise. That evening, I make my monthly donation to the First Generation Scholars Fund. A small amount, but regular as sunrise. Then I open Madison's latest paper, The Performance of Success, Artifice and Authenticity in Fitzgerald's Gatsby. My red pen hovers over the first paragraph. Strong thesis. Clear voice. No trace of the superficial analysis that marked her early work. I write excellent observation in the margin, then catch myself smiling. The next morning brings a flurry of notifications. Aunt Carol has tagged me in a Facebook post. So proud of our 2 Princeton women, the Monroe legacy of excellence continues. I nearly choke on my coffee. 3 months ago, she'd asked if I still worked at that community college up north. A text from my mother follows. Darling, what's your teaching schedule this semester? Thought I might drive up, see your classroom, if you're not too busy. I set my phone to silent and pull up the academic journal submission guidelines. Madison's research on gender roles in 19th century sensation novels shows promise. Time to list her as my research assistant. The days blur into weeks. Madison declines the family's autumn gathering to attend a Victorian literature conference with me. Mother starts asking hesitant questions about tenure-track positions over rushed coffee dates. Even my youngest cousins email for advice about college applications. Then comes Madison's late-night call. Her voice small, almost childlike. I'm not coming to Thanksgiving. I need to figure out who I am when they're not watching. I know, I tell her. Will you go, even though I won't be there? I look at the folder on my desk labeled Quiet Victories, Madison's first A paper, her journal publication acceptance, the notes from students she's tutored in the writing center. Yes, some battles need witnesses. They'll blame you for changing me. No, I run my finger along the folder's edge. They'll blame me for helping you become yourself. Different thing entirely. After we hang up, I add her latest email to the folder. The one where she wrote, I finally understand what you meant about the difference between a voice and an echo. I pack the folder in my satchel, between copies of academic journals and student papers. Tomorrow I'll drive south to Charleston, to the family table where I once sat silent. But this time, I'm bringing evidence of a different kind of legacy. One built on truth instead of appearances. On effort instead of inheritance. This time, I'm bringing proof that sometimes the greatest victory is helping someone else find their voice. Even if it means their first true words are no. The next day, the sunlight bounces off the brass numbers on Aunt Carol's front door, 1842 Plantation Drive, Ive. The same door I've walked through 100 times, always with a stone in my stomach. Today, the stone feels heavier. My Princeton department chair blazer still carries the crisp scent of dry cleaning. Inside the breast pocket, a folded academic journal presses against my heart like armor. Through the window, I catch a glimpse of Madison's high school graduation photo displayed prominently on the mantel. Her Yale acceptance letter framed beside it, though she never enrolled there. The cherrywood frame matches the one holding her Princeton acceptance, the one that arrived after she was already my student. Aunt Carol opens the door before I can knock. Her face shifts from welcome to wariness in the space of a breath. Charlotte, how professional you look. The foyer smells of sage and butter, overlaid with Grandmother Margaret's Chanel No. 5. Voices drift from the formal living room, where Brian holds court near the fireplace. His latest startup pitch carries over the classical music Mother insists on playing at every holiday. And that's why NFTs are the future of real estate, Brian announces to a circle of nodding relatives. Madison gets it. She's already invested. I slide my leather folder onto the sideboard, between Mother's wedding china and the silver gravy boat that hasn't been polished since Kennedy was president. Inside, Madison's publication waits like a loaded gun. Charlotte, Aunt Cheryl's voice drips with artificial sweetness. How's the teaching going, dear? Still grading papers at that small college up north? The room ripples with polite laughter. Uncle Robert adjusts his bow tie, the same one he's worn to every Thanksgiving since 1985. Some of us work real jobs, Cheryl. Teaching's more of a calling. Isn't that right, Charlotte? Mother's fingers tighten around her wine stem. She glances between me and the rest of the family, lips pressed into a thin line. The same expression she wore when I turned down law school. Actually, I reached for my folder. I brought something to share. Not another academic article. Brian lifts his scotch in a mock toast. We're here to celebrate Madison making something of herself, even if she couldn't make it today. The leather folder opens with a soft crackle. The journal's glossy cover catches the light from Aunt Carol's Victorian chandelier. My finger traces Madison's name in the author line, then mine as faculty advisor. Madison is making something of herself, I say, my voice steady. She worked for this, actually worked. Grandmother Margaret's hand trembles as she reaches for the journal. Her reading glasses slide down her nose as she scans the publication details. The room goes quiet enough to hear the antique grandfather clock in the hall. Madison almost failed my class. The words land like stones in still water. She wrote beautiful sentences that said nothing, used charm instead of analysis. Counted on her name to carry her through like it always had. Mother's wine glass clinks against her teeth. Brian's startup pitch dies mid-sentence. But, she learned. I step closer to the fireplace, where Madison's photos smile down at the gathering. She learned to think, to question, to write something real. That publication isn't about her name. It's about her mind. The silence stretches. Then Cousin Erica, barely 20 herself, starts to clap. The sound echoes against Aunt Carol's crown molding, spreading like ripples until other hands join in. Grandmother Margaret's fingers trace the embossed letters of Princeton's seal on the journal cover. Hermine over the rim of her glasses. For the first time in 35 years, I see something that might be respect. I should go, I say, reaching for my coat. Early class tomorrow. Mother follows me onto the porch, her heels clicking against the painted boards. The air smells of wood smoke and approaching winter. She doesn't speak, just pulls me into an awkward embrace that tastes of Chardonnay and things we've never said. My phone buzzes as I reach my car. Madison's text glows in the gathering dark. They told me what you did. The stone in my stomach dissolves as I type back. Good. Now go write something real. Behind me, light spills from Aunt Carol's windows. Inside, my family studies Madison's publication, seeing her name and maybe mine clearly for the first time. I start my car and drive away from the house that held me small for so long, leaving the silence I've carried since childhood behind on the perfectly manicured lawn. The department chair's blazer still smells of dry cleaning, but now it carries another scent-toothed, sharp, sweet perfume of truth finally spoken. The day before the spring semester officially starts, the Princeton Literature Department letterhead gleams under my desk lamp. Professor Monroe, we are pleased to inform you of your nomination for Professor of the Year. My fingers trace the embossed seal, remembering another piece of paper months ago, Madison's final essay, the one that proved everything could change. A knock at my office door breaks my reverie. Come in. Madison steps inside, her teaching assistant badge catching the afternoon light. Gone are the designer dresses and tennis bracelets. She wears a simple black blazer, her grandmother's pearls her only adornment. The writing applications are ready for review. I gesture to the chair across from my desk, the same one where she once sat in tears over her first C grade. How many applicants this year? 73. Madison's smile reaches her eyes as she settles into the seat, including 3 from Charleston. Apparently, word got around about your first-generation student mentorship program. The irony doesn't escape either of us. A year ago, the family wouldn't acknowledge my career. Now they're sending their children to learn from me. My phone buzzes Mother's weekly check-in. What started as stilted coffee meetings has evolved into something approaching real conversation. Last week, she asked about my research for the first time in 15 years. Did you see what Grandmother sent? Madison pulls an envelope from her bag. Inside, a newspaper clipping features my latest academic publication. Grandmother Margaret's precise handwriting in the margin reads, "Brilliant analysis, Charlotte. We should discuss this over tea." She called last Tuesday. I arranged the clipping next to my nomination letter. Wanted to know if I'd consider giving a guest lecture at her literary society. Madison's laugh holds no bitterness. Remember when she said people teach because they can't do? Now she's practically running my fan club. I sort through the workshop applications, pausing at a familiar name. Brian's daughter applied. He's taking classes at community college now. Madison leans forward, her expression soft. Says he finally understands what we see in education. The afternoon sun slants through my office window, illuminating the photos on my wall. No more family portraits of forced smiles and hollow achievements. Instead, candid shots of graduation ceremonies, student presentations, and one particular image Madison and me, presenting our joint research at last month's academic conference. Mother hung your award in the living room. Madison traces the edge of my desk calendar where I've penciled in next week's coffee with cousin Sarah's daughter. Right next to great-grandfather William's Princeton diploma. The old guard and the new. I pull a folder from my drawer labeled in fresh ink. Visible victories. Inside, letters from students whose lives changed in this office. At the top, Madison's first A paper, marked with both our tears. About that. Madison straightens, Professor Mode engaged. I've been thinking about after graduation. I wait, watching her gather her thoughts. She's learned the power of silence, this former queen of rapid-fire charm. I want to teach. Her voice holds the quiet certainty I've come to recognize in my best students. Not just as a TA. I want to do what you do, help people find their real voice, not just their family voice. The setting sun paints Princeton's Gothic architecture in shades of possibility. Through my window, students cross the courtyard, some pausing to wave at their notorious Professor Monroe and her equally notorious TA. I've started a scholarship fund. I hand her a brochure, still warm from the printer. The Monroe Educational Legacy Grant, for students pursuing teaching careers. Madison's breath catches. Below the title, 2 names listed as program directors: Charlotte Monroe, PhD, and Madison Monroe, BA candidate. You're changing the family legacy. Her fingers trace our names, not just for us, but for all of them. My lecture hall fills tomorrow with a new semester of students, including 3 young Monroes who chose Princeton's literature program over law school. Their parents' holiday cards no longer carry veiled disappointment, but genuine questions about reading lists and teaching philosophies. We're changing it together. I place Madison's latest student evaluations in the Visible Victories folder. Her students praise her ability to see past their polished veneers to their authentic potential. The campus lights flicker on as dusk approaches. Madison gathers her things, yellow legal pad filled with notes for tomorrow's freshman seminar. At the door, she pauses. You didn't just teach me literature. Her voice carries the weight of transformation. You taught me it's okay to be the person you are, not the person they planned. I watch her walk across the courtyard, her shadow merging with the lengthening evening. Through the leaded glass, our reflections overlap professor and protege, past and future, 2 generations of Monroe women who dared to rewrite their own stories. A text lights up my phone. Mother again. Found your old journals in the attic. You always were a teacher even then. We just weren't ready to see it. I turn back to the workshop applications, each one a chance to extend this legacy of authentic achievement. The Professor of the Year nomination letter catches the last ray of sunlight, no longer a validation I desperately need, but simply a milestone on a road I was always meant to travel. Success isn't measured in family approval or society page mentions. It lives in the quiet moments of recognition, in the courage to speak truth when the room falls silent, in the power to help others find their voice, even when yours has been dismissed. I place Madison's teaching evaluation in the Visible Victories folder and close my office door. Tomorrow brings another chance to prove that the loudest applause often comes from the most unexpected places and that sometimes the greatest legacy is the courage to create your own.